Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something literally every single community faces, but honestly, rarely talks about with actual hard numbers. We're talking about public safety spending. Specifically, we're zooming right in on the Village of the Hills. It's this fascinating micro-study in how local governments have to balance that natural, totally understandable desire for community safety with the hard, undeniable fiscal realities of a municipal budget. Let me just start off by asking you a direct question. Picture yourself sitting at your kitchen table, right? And someone asks you to sign a 4-year binding financial contract, but they won't tell you exactly how much you're actually going to use the service you're paying for. Would you sign it? Yeah, probably not. You'd want to know the details for sure. Yet, believe it or not, this is exactly the dynamic currently playing out in municipal council chambers. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. The price of presence, 2. What we actually buy, 3. A ballooning police budget, 4. Flexibility versus permanence, and 5. Support the Hills Observer. Kicking things off with Section 1, the price of presence, feeling safe versus knowing the cost. So looking at these demographics, it paints a really clear picture of the environment we're dealing with. The Hills is a pretty tight-knit community of just 2,579 residents. The median home value is nearly $780,000, and get this, only 3.8% of the housing is renter-occupied. So what does this all mean? Well, it tells us this is a small, affluent, heavily controlled, mostly owner-occupied village. It's a quiet place. And from a financial perspective, a community exactly like this needs to be exceptionally disciplined about major recurring commitments. Because, a multi-year staffing contract doesn't just magically go away if you decide you don't really need it next year. Moving on to Section 2, what we actually buy, unpacking the blended policing model. Now, it's a really common misconception out there that communities either have a massive full-time police department or they are completely unprotected. That is absolutely a false choice. The Hills actually doesn't operate its own municipal police department. Instead, they use what's called a blended model, and it's highly effective. They contract for a deputy constable who's on duty 40 hours a week at random times. And when that constable isn't around, the Travis County Sheriff is the designated backup. If they happen to be busy, Lakeway Police or other agencies step right in. They even get softer community-oriented services, like close patrols of your house when you're away on vacation. So the village is definitely not choosing between safety and no safety. They are already paying for a layered, really robust presence. Now, what's really interesting about this is the reality of what those officers are actually dealing with day to day. If we look at the official incident log from February 2026, we see 62 traffic stops, 36 community contacts, 5 false alarms, and exactly 1 actual theft. The daily reality here is heavily focused on stop signs, speeding, contractors, and delivery drivers. We are absolutely not looking at a broad violent crime wave here. It's a traffic-heavy concern, which is, wildly important when a city council is trying to figure out what kind of policing they actually need to buy. Which brings us to Section 3, a ballooning police budget, tracking the increases. Let's track the financial trend here because it's pretty eye-opening. In the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year, the adopted law enforcement budget jumped from a base of about $149,000 up to $200,000. That was a nearly 34% increase explicitly to buy additional constable patrol hours. Then, the very next year, the 2025 to 2026 budget continued that exact same trend. But here is the stark reality. By March of 2026, the monthly financial report showed the law enforcement budget pacing at a whopping $230,000. The spending crept up incredibly quickly, and it was consistently justified by just wanting, quote, additional hours. Let's see how this builds into the broader civic picture. $1,049,652.97. That specific number right there is the total projected general fund expenditures for the entire 2025 to 2026 fiscal year. Basically, the whole operating budget is just over $1 million. When your entire budget is that tight, a policing line item that creeps from $149,000 to $230,000, that is a massive, dominating chunk of your financial pie. The village simply has very little margin for error when recurring costs balloon like this, because at the end of the day, every single dollar spent on permanent patrol is a dollar that cannot be spent on park improvements, wildfire mitigation, or pedestrian safety. Let's move to Section 4, Flexibility versus Permanence, the January 2026 Council debate. So at that January meeting, the council debated adding a second full-time constable on a new 4-year contract. And guys, the financial contrast they discussed is staggering. On one hand, you have a variable overtime model. This costs about $77 per productive hour. And the beauty of it is, it's flexible. If you have a sudden problem with weekday delivery traffic, you buy hours right then. On the other hand, you have the full-time model. This whole shebang costs about $113 per productive hour, and it represents a fixed, permanent, multi-year cost. The core argument here is actually pretty simple. Why buy the more expensive permanent model if the flexible model can target your exact traffic problems for way less money? And that brings us to the super important concept of the trigger. A trigger is basically a defined data-driven threshold or unmet need that mathematically justifies locking the community into higher recurring costs. During a subsequent February meeting, there was this really wise financial discussion that essentially said, hey, wait a minute, before we buy more permanent coverage, we need a trigger. We need hard data showing an actual unmet need. We need to analyze traffic violations, theft experience, and, mitigation alternatives first. You just don't go buying permanents without a trigger. Finally, Section 5, support the Hills Observer, the role of local journalism. So the crucial point is summarized just perfectly by this quote right from the pages of the Hills Observer. It reads, "The Hills should not reduce safety. It should reduce the assumption that more police hours are automatically the same thing as more safety." I mean, wow, that is such a powerful, grounded editorial stance. It's not about ignoring valid safety concerns or being anti-police, not at all. It's about demanding precision. It's about requiring local government to actually prove with data that targeted overtime, better gate management, or strict false alarm rules cannot solve the actual problem before just handing over a blank check for a permanent tax burden. And honestly, that is exactly why it's absolutely crucial to support and spread the word about the Hills Observer. Think about it. The only reason residents of the Hills, or honestly any of us watching this explainer today, even know about these complex municipal budget debates, the triggers, the $77 versus $113 an hour arguments, is because of local journalism. Informed communities rely completely on supported local journalism to dig through those boring meeting minutes, watch hours of council videos, unpack the financial receipts, and bring these vital facts straight to the public. If you care about how your community is run and how your tax dollars are spent, you literally have to champion the people doing the reporting. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. Just think about your own community for a second. If your city council wanted to lock you into a multi-year, fixed-cost contract, what data would you need to see to justify a permanent tax increase? Would a general feeling of wanting more presence be enough? Or would you step up and demand the receipts and the triggers? Dig into your local data, support your local observers, and stay curious. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.